In this presentation, we will take a look into race and sentencing, its history, impact on the criminal justice system, society, and current events that we have seen that reflect the problems therein. In regards to race, it has been found in many studies that black male offenders have continued to receive longer sentences than similarly situated white male offenders. Issues associated with sentencing often involve non-government sponsored departures and variances, which often contribute significantly to the difference in sentence length between black and white male offenders. Racially biased sentencing has been studied for decades, and research has shown that race can and has played a role in determining an offender's sentence. In both real-life data and research scenarios, it is shown that people of color have been more harshly sentenced than white people have, in both sentence length and sentence severity. The USSC reported that black male offenders were issued longer sentences than white male offenders by 19.1%. Their report from 2010 also showed a difference in sentencing based on race. A Canadian study asked participants to respond to 4 different scenarios with how they would want the offender to be sentenced. They were allowed to vote for a prison sentence or a less serious punishment, such as a fine, a community service assignment, or probation. The scenarios included a white offender with no criminal record and a black offender with no criminal record. They also described a white offender and a black offender who did have criminal records. Whether he did or did not have a criminal record, participants demanded a significantly harsher sentence be issued to the black offender. Furthermore, they determined that the black offender, whether he had a record or not, was more dangerous than the white offender. Regarding the death penalty, sentencing has been inconsistent based on race in the past. A study brought up the factor of defense resources and how people of color may not have as good of opportunities as white people do when it comes to finding a good lawyer. With all of this being said, there is a debate of whether or not these correlations automatically mean the criminal justice system is racially biased. Some people might suggest that it is completely fair for people of color to be sentenced more harshly and that maybe they commit more serious crimes. This can be debunked by the Bureau of Justice, which says only 29% of violent crimes were committed by black people in 1994. The other side of the debate questions the criminal justice system and whether or not we can trust it to be fair. Criminal justice officials are supposed to treat all people as equals in the courtroom, but personal biases may be contributing to some of the inconsistencies we see in sentencing. There are multiple actors involved in the criminal justice system on a multi-dimensional level from arrest to sentencing, and each have the responsibility of making decisions that affect the system as a whole. These actors include police officers at the time of arrest, prosecutors when negotiating plea deals, judges, jurors, etc. It has been concluded in many studies that race does play a large part in each actor's decision-making, and although some decisions that are made are small on the level of the situation they relate to, the collection of these small biased decisions have a large impact on the criminal justice system and future behaviors and decisions. So although the decisions may be subtle to the case they pertain to, they perpetuate a cycle that take large effect over time. More specifically speaking, all of the biased decisions made within the system lead to a large population of minorities represented, which fuels stereotypes, which are then taken into consideration into the decisions of those major actors I previously mentioned, especially regarding sentencing. There is research that suggests that specifically in criminal cases, race can play a significant role. Within the research, it was found that racial bias in decision-making can be heavily associated with specific crimes. Examples of stereotyping crimes with race that was found within the studies included embezzlement charges associated with white individuals and motor vehicle theft crimes associated with black individuals. A separate study that also focused on racial bias in decision-making within the criminal justice system found that a Hispanic poor defendant was found guilty by 55% of jurors, whereas a white wealthy individual was found guilty by only 32% of jurors. This points to an obvious bias. Current events within the United States of America show how the criminal justice system lacks balance when fairly sentencing minorities. Racism and prejudices based on stereotypes have created a divide within this country. Although more people are becoming aware of this, a lot of people still hide their racist and prejudiced views from the world and fear that their peers will not accept their way of thinking. But this does not necessarily affect sentencing in the courtroom. Racial discrimination has created disparities within the criminal justice system. Two examples that can be proven to be beneficial in showing the difference in sentences between different racial groups are the Brock Turner case and the justice served for Clifford Williams and his nephew Hubert Myers. These are important to review and be aware of because Brock Turner, a white college student who is relatively well off, was able to receive a slap on the wrist after being accused of raping an African American woman, while Clifford was sentenced to death for the death of a white woman. One main topic we often hear about is white privilege. In the case of People versus Brock Turner, Turner was sentenced to only 6 months in jail, followed by 3 months of probation. Brock was arrested on Stanford's campus for raping an intoxicated and unconscious female African American student. He pleaded not guilty to rape of an intoxicated person, rape of an unconscious person, sexual penetration of an intoxicated woman, sexual penetration of an unconscious woman, and assault with the intent to commit rape. He was only charged with 3 of those 5 counts. Clifford Williams Jr. and his nephew Hubert Nathan Myers were wrongly convicted of murder and attempted murder of Jeanette Williams and Nina Marshall in 1976. Clifford Williams was sentenced to death row, although Williams and Myers were at a birthday party during the time of the shooting. But the police and the judge ignored the fact that there were about 40 individuals who could give Williams and Myers an alibi. This points to the fact that the judicial system has a habit of going out of their way to ignore the severity of white crime compared to crime that could potentially involve a minority. Sentencing and its impact on society. How have the different forms of sentencing, from fines and probation to the death penalty, impacted individuals and families within society? Fines can create financial hardships for citizens who cannot afford to pay for the crime they may or may not have committed. Probation leaves room for former criminals to be placed back into the system for an even longer sentence than expected. Incarceration is the most impactful sentence, and it leaves families and children without parents and guardians, while also breaking families apart and creating financial struggles by promoting one-income households. This is common in Black and Hispanic households, and incarceration has also caused an increased rate of single Black mothers. On this slide is a graph provided by the United States Sentencing Commission that shows the percentage difference in sentence length for Black men versus white men with similar background who commit the same crimes by time period. These statistics show that although people may commit the same crimes, their race will determine how much time they will serve. Mandatory sentencing schemes include 3-strike laws that state that an individual with 3 violence or drug-related felonies will serve life in prison without the possibility of parole. This has created financial issues within the state and federal government due to the rising incarceration rates. 3-strike laws and the death penalty impact society significantly. Over the past 30 years of mandatory sentencing, 3-strike laws and other get tough on crime and criminal policies have dramatically increased the use of incarceration as a sentencing option. 3-strike laws increase the possibility of former felony offenders to be sentenced to life in prison, splitting up families and increasing the chance of a continuing cycle of living in low-class environments, which can also pose issues when dealing with people who are unable to seek out help after being released from prison. An example of such individuals include drug users and individuals with mental health issues. The death penalty impacts society due to the discrimination by law enforcement and officials of the criminal justice system, and ultimately gives the government the power to cause individuals to be falsely convicted and sentenced to death. The question is, should the government determine who lives and who dies? There are various possibilities for improvement regarding the death penalty. However, when it comes to trying to correct racial injustices, this task can only truly be identified and corrected by the people and by personnel within the criminal justice system. Reviewing criminal background, severity of crimes, people affected, and the crime committed at hand should be the major considerations when determining a sentence for the defendant. Unfortunately, as statistics have continued to reveal, this is typically not the case, and the people of other racial background other than Caucasians are sentenced more harshly for equivalent behaviors and crimes. That being said, the standard could potentially be set for every individual. As in, each crime that is committed has a specific sentence or punishment, and then their criminal history will be considered if that sentence should be intensified or not. The backlash on this option is that probation and parole may still be more prevalent for whites if the judge chooses to grant these options, but this method could still potentially minimize racial discrepancies and sentencing. Other improvement options for harsh sentencing and the death penalty may include island isolation, probation and parole focuses, input and choice. Island isolation separates extremely dangerous criminals to secluded islands for life without the option of parole or probation. An example where this has been utilized is Australia's carceral island in 1788 to 1901. Australia used its prisoners to advance in colonization and economic expansion. This sentencing also helped maintain order and separate dangerous individuals from society. We could also change and adapt the focus of probation and parole. An increase in probation and parole for lower risk and more minor crime-committing criminals would result in an increase in space to use for incarceration of highly dangerous criminals. This also could help reduce the billions of dollars taxpayers contribute to capital punishment. Lastly, input and choice. Before sentencing a criminal to the death penalty, there would have to be specific inputs by the individuals affected, as well as deep investigation and appropriate evidence. Another crucial factor is having inputs from multiple race officials within the justice system. Some of these voices would include family, friends, victims, and justice officials. If the sentence is chosen and differs from the death penalty, then the criminal should have the option to either accept the sentence presented or move forward with the death penalty. The main downfall of this option is the cost of taxpayers and time consumption issues. To review this presentation, racial bias is a recurring issue. There have been discrepancies involving race and the role it plays in severity and length of sentencing in the criminal justice system. Oftentimes, offenders other than that of a Caucasian background are continually proven to receive longer sentencing and more severe punishments for equal crimes. Criminal record plays a key role in sentencing and how harsh a punishment may be. However, persons of color continue to be seen as more dangerous or sentenced to higher punishment such as the death penalty when compared to white offenders in equal criminal standard. The Clifford Williams case and the Brock Turner case are just two examples of the racial bias that is still strongly intertwined within our justice system today. Not only are the lives of the accused or falsely accused changed forever, but their families also have to reevaluate and handle new challenges, oftentimes financial burdens due to one less family member's contribution at home. Race in sentencing presents challenges within the criminal justice system as well. Capital punishment continues to be a topic of concern, revised and continually monitored. Several states in the United States have decided to ban against the death penalty, and many other states are pushing towards ending and minimizing capital punishment altogether. Capital punishment is conflictual with federal and state values and continues to be a more prevalent sentence for people of color than of Caucasians. There are limited ways we can contribute to minimizing racial issues in the justice system, but continually developing new ideas, making people aware, and identifying systems to replace capital punishment are crucial to developing a better justice system, a justice system for the people, by the people.